Hi, I'm Alexander Siddig, and you are with the SyFy Sistas, and I think they are going to rock your world.
Everybody, welcome to the SyFy Sistas podcast, where we give you our point of view. I'm your host, Tamia Harper, and I'm joined by my sisters, Yvette Blackman-Tom.
Hello.
Sabrina Wood.
Whoop, whoop.
And Fran T.
What's happening?
Okay, so all of us are sitting here truly tickled today because we have Star Trek royalty in the house. To us, absolute royalty, and we all had a crush on him, and we still have a crush on him, and that ain't ever going to change. I can tell you that much right now. But you know, if you watched popular TV, especially in any type of suspense or science fiction vein, in the past 10, 20 years, you've seen this man's work and heard his incredible voice. Everything from, and one of my personal favorites, MI5, Kingdom of Heaven, that movie. Oof. I love that movie. That was a great movie. Yep. Primeval, which was a fantastic show. I loved that show. Game of Thrones.
Lord.
Y'all know, Lord. Come on now. Peaky Blinders. Okay, now that's a dude show. Gotham was my jam. Gotham was my jam, and you were my man on Gotham. And even more recently, Shantaram. Did I say it right?
Yeah, Shantaram. You know what? Okay. It may be Shantaram and Wilson.
I don't know. Well, now you've heard his voice, y'all. We're talking about Alexander Siddig. We're talking about the one and only Dr. Bashir is joining us on the show today.
Yay! Thank you. Hi.
And most recently, he of SidCity fame. Okay, go ahead.
I've known you guys 5 minutes and I already love you, ladies. The fan is reversing. I'm turning the fan around.
Oh my God.
It's mutual, buddy. Thank you so much for joining us. I know we have a ton of questions and we're going to come at you, but I got to start this off by saying one of the first places I ever saw you on screen was in Agatha Christie's Poirot.
Oh, yeah.
With David Suchet, and you played, what was that guy's name? Shaitan, the collector.
Yeah, I think Shaitan is actually kind of the Muslim word for Satan.
Is that what it was? Okay, I was
in there. There's a clue in there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but he sort of bit the dust, so, you know.
He did. He kind of tried to confound Poirot by actually killing himself. And I mean, I don't want to. That is a major spoiler. I have to say. I have just wrecked that episode.
I mean, it's a good one.
Well, it's been like 20, 30 years. I think it's good. We're good.
Yeah.
It's okay.
That was last, like 10 years. Spoiler, no.
Right.
It was on like in the 20th century, okay?
That's right, Frank.
I mean, you've done so many amazing things in your career, and you seem like one of the most versatile actors out there. And I think what's amazing to me is how early in your career, or at least it seems early to me, like that Deep Space Nine came into your life. Like, right? Wasn't that one of your first major gigs?
That was my second thing. It was actually my third thing. My first thing was a TV series that it's called The Big Battalions, which is kind of bizarre. And we shot that in Mecca and Jerusalem. And I don't know if, you can see my name there. That's my actual name, not Alexander Siddig,
right?
Which is a Muslim name. So they were like, we need a Muslim actor because we're going to Mecca. And they searched high and low. And I met one other kid in the outside the audition, the meeting with the thing. And he was like really excited. And he said, so how did you hear about this? And I said, well, I was at acting school and they found my name and yada, yada, yada. And I said, how did you hear about it? He said, I saw an ad in the paper. They were desperate.
Desperate. Wow.
So I got that job and went to Mecca and Jerusalem. And
that's really cool.
Crazy. Yeah, with Brian Cox, actually. Brian Cox and Jane Lapotaire were in that show.
Okay.
Wow.
And then I did a movie called A Dangerous Man, Lawrence After Arabia, with the Ray Fiennes, or Ralph, if you want to annoy him.
Isn't that the man who we should not mention? The one.
And then Rick Berman saw that, and then and wheeled me over into the US to come and to change my life, actually. And when I was about 26, 27.
Wow.
Completely changed everything about my life.
For the good.
And he was wanting you to be Cisco, right?
He wanted me to be Cisco. Yeah, that was because he'd seen A Dangerous Man. I played Faisal, the King Faisal, first king, and it was Hashemite king. And I looked about in my mid-30s because I had this big beard and I was playing very grown up. And then I walked in the door and this kid arrived who knew anything. And he was like, let's find him another part.
Oh man, you took the beard off and that was it, huh?
And that was it, huh?
Oh.
They like taking beards off of all the brown men.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Man.
I mean, but that was to our credit because, I mean, we got Dr. Bashir and man,
I got Dr. Bashir. I got Dr. Bashir too. And that guy changed me forever, made me a different human being because he got out his med kit and injected me with confidence and self-esteem and the things that you need in this world and everybody should have. So I wanted to show the journey of what it was like to be a young man who had none of that and slowly found it.
I love that.
Yeah.
You did it because his journey is, I mean, of all the Star Treks, this is the only one where we have the young doctor coming in. You know, all the others are top of their fields and, medical officer. Yeah, they know everything and they're talking captains down and everything. But you came in there, going to be, what is it, frontier medicine. I was loving it.
Right.
And chasing Jadzia. Poor Jadzia.
Absolutely. Chasing Jadzia. Head of Major Kira. He had it all. He had everything to deal with there.
Told Kira, frontier medicine. She looked at him like, excuse me? Oh my goodness.
But I love that because on that show then we had a brown doctor, which made me so happy. And we hadn't really seen that since Dr. Daystrom.
Yeah, no.
Dr.
The Brown Doctor.
Yeah.
Two of the most important people on the whole whole show are, that's 20% of the cast. Yeah, that doesn't happen anywhere except for Star Trek. And we actually got an award from SAG, I think, for diversity. And it was just one of the things that Star Trek does without even thinking. They're just so ahead of the game on those things that they were like, oh, what? Oh, yeah. They looked for a brown captain. And they luckily found Avery Brooks. Who talking about voices. That dude can stop traffic with his voice.
You got that right.
Yes, he can.
He sure can.
I mean, too, like nobody's surprised. I'm sure this will come as no surprise to everybody. It's Deep Space Nine is how I fall asleep at night. Most of the time, like it's on in the background, the hum of the engines and all the voices, it's the voices.
That. It's comfort. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that, how cool is that? Well, it's cool to us that, and it might be freaky to you, but it's cool to us that, that your voices are, living and such an active part of so many people's lives. It's not what you all do means a lot, especially in Star Trek, especially what you did in Star Trek.
That's what we're here for. That's exactly our job. That's what to make comfortable people uncomfortable and uncomfortable people comfortable.
Well, thank you.
All the time.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that, bedtime stories, I'm your man.
Yeah. We'll be calling you next week. Thank you very much for the offer.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so I can dominate this about Star Trek, about Deep Space Nine, so I'm not going to.
That's okay.
I have a question to ask.
Absolutely, Fran.
Thank you. The Garrick and the Garrick thing, I'm about to allude to.
Let's go there.
Okay. Did you at all know where, because, hindsight is 2020. Did you have any inkling that he was like enamored with you?
No. I didn't.
In the beginning.
No, I didn't, and he didn't either. And it just happened in the scene.
Okay.
That there was first scene we did was at a small replimat on the promenade, and there was a little plant sticking out of a flower pot, just in decorating the table. And the way he walked around me, and the way he looked at me, made me think, this dude's coming on to me, and. It made me react, but it didn't make me react in a way that made me upset. It made me react in a way that made me like, whew, okay, game has changed. I'm a bit freaked out. I'm a bit out of my depth. And it turned into a beautiful relationship. Yeah.
When he put his hands on your shoulder at the end of the scene and the look on your face, it was just priceless.
But it wasn't revulsion.
No.
It was just like, I'm just out of my depth here. This is cool, but I'm out of my depth.
So I just wanted to, bring that part up because there's been some debate about it.
The writers were amazing because they were like, Andy was probably going to do just that show, maybe a couple more, and that would have been it. And the strength of his performance and what he found gave them a whole box to open and go, there's a whole box of stuff in here. We can write about this. And so they kept Andy on for the whole 7 years.
Yes, they did.
So
Garrick. Because he, Andy is prominent in our favorite. We did a DS9 top 10.
Yeah.
And he's all through there, Garrick, and doing his Garrick thing, Garrick and in the pale moonlight. In the pale moonlight, he was in that, and he was just fantastic in that.
He's fantastic, and he's a fantastic man. Andy Robinson is just a beautiful man. He's this.
I saw him. I had a chance to talk to him in the elevator in Vegas.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, I love this movie you were in years ago called Charlie Varick. And he said, that was my favorite movie. It was him and Walter Matthau.
Oh my
Joe
God.
Don Baker.
Talk to me about that.
Wow. It is a great movie. I will look at it, just look at it because I love the movie.
I am writing that down.
Charlie, me too. Charlie Varick. Look at it. It's from the 70s.
Yep.
But it's a great movie, and he said that was his favorite movie that he ever did.
What's the name of it again?
Charlie Varick.
Okay.
Charlie Varick.
Walter
I know
Matthau.
somebody named Charlie Varick.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
One of my favorite old school actors.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, one of my favorite movies too. And he was such a gentleman. He it wasn't like I was like intruding on him, but I had to tell him, I loved you in that movie. And he acknowledged it.
The thing about Andy is that he tells the truth. And and it just sounds grumpy, but it's not grumpy. He just says it, and he'll swear. So he'll be cussing up and down, but and saying the truth at the same time. But if you listen to him carefully, he's a very wise man, and he's giving us the benefit of those years. And I'm very lucky to have him as a friend.
But you two were great. You two were great together. You just played off. The chemistry was there.
We loved each other. We loved acting with each other. We just thought it was great fun, and we hung out. I met his wife and his daughter, and I was a frequent guest at his house. He never came to my house, but my house was a wreck. My apartment was disgusting.
You were a young man, of course it was.
And my apartment was, exactly like that, and. Just bunches of computer equipment and stuff that I'd wired together, and everything was about my desk and my computer. That was my life. Everything else, the kitchen overflowing, washing up in the living room, and everything just lying everywhere. And my clothes, I just kind of wait 5 days and recycle them.
Oh my.
Okay, that's clean now. Put it back on again.
Wow.
Oh my goodness. The things we find out.
Yes. Sid, I wanted to ask you, did you know anything about Star Trek? We usually ask everybody that.
I did. I loved it. I watched The Next Generation with my friend Colin, and I was living in Tooting in London. Which is such a weird name, but it's called Tooting. And it
is a weird name.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, what should we call it? Beep, beep. Oh, let's call it Tooting.
That means something here that I maybe not mean something there, but okay.
Anyway, I lived there, and we would go down to the main street and go to the Blockbusters and pick out 2 videos of Next Generation. I watched all of it, everything that there had been before I got the job. So I knew about the job when my agent said, "There's something called Star Trek, darling.
Something.
You want to do it?" Yeah. And I had a very famous agent called Pippa Markham, who was famously eccentric and amazing. She's retired now, but she's just one of the most astonishing. I was very lucky to have her because she's a form. Everyone was terrified of her, which is what you want from your agent.
Yeah.
And I said, sure. And she didn't tell me anything about it. I didn't know anything about it except for so I imagined that I was going to be in The Next Generation when I was given the audition. And fancifully, I thought, well, I think Deanna Troi is a little bit ethnic looking. I could be her cousin or something. And LeVar was not going to happen, but I was like, hey, man, Deanna Troy's long lost cousin coming back for a show or something like that. And it turned out it was Dr. Bashir.
Look at that.
Oh God.
Yeah, that's right. You own nothing, all new.
Yeah, studios don't tell you anything. They sign you up. I mean, it was about a week between the first time I auditioned and packing my bags and leaving everything.
Wow.
Oh my goodness, that was fast.
Crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
They do things quickly,
Yeah, okay.
And how long did they tell you? Did they tell you, okay, be ready for a season, or
they did? No, after I finished the audition, which has never happened in my life since, and never happens to actors. One of the executive producers from the studio, not even the show, like one of the women who run the studio, came up to me and said, "So, are you ready to move to Los Angeles?" And I was
like what?
I guess I'd say yes.
Right?
No cell phones back then, but they were like early days. I was like, I couldn't text anybody or anything. So I was just
like, wait till you get home. Oh,
man, this is not, this isn't a 2-week deal. This is,
I didn't, I was 26, 27. I did not care about the future. I didn't care how long it took. I didn't think about whether or not it was going to be 6 years or 5 months. It just was all gravy to me. And it turned out that it was going to be, I didn't realize that nobody had ever canceled a Star Trek show. They would never damage the franchise at that point. And so despite how unpopular we were, because we were genuinely unpopular with the executives and with some of the population at large, they just couldn't stop the show. So the Ira just went, okay, I can do something with this. I can exploit this.
Oh yeah.
Being a kind of a child who's ignored gives you a chance to go do your own stuff, as anyone
Exactly.
child who's ignored knows.
If all us Gen Xers know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Positive
Yes,
of
we
that,
do.
or you get damaged by that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Positive.
Yeah, definitely. Oh my goodness.
Well,
That's
we were
awesome.
in there from the emissary. We were there from the beginning.
All the way.
Never phased us.
Never.
You know, I mean, because the power of seeing brown people in space.
Mhm.
I mean, even if the show had been shitty,
Yes.
I would have been there with
I've
you
been
all,
going
like,
for it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
through thick and thin.
All the way
You know,
through.
You know, you were
there
the only
three
ones.
black, brown men leading that show.
Mm-hmm.
You got
Yeah.
Avery, Sirach, and Sid.
yeah.
You Sid. I mean, that just looking
amazing.
at it now is just. I still look at it and go, "There's still nothing on TV
Right.
like this."
Still, it's not even
Yeah,
Star
and
Trek.
It had been 25 years since Nichelle was on, Star Trek. So
Yes.
by the time we started, and that was the last, I think there might be someone in one of the other shows somewhere along the line, but we just crowded the place out.
No,
That's
yeah.
right. I mean, like,
TNG didn't have nobody. Well, yes, they
Yeah,
had.
we had
They had
Jordy.
Worf
They had
Worf and
Yeah.
Jordy.
Jordy.
Worf and Jordy.
well, they had
and Guinan. Yeah.
right. Well,
Okay.
Guinan was
Yeah.
like peppered in every
Yeah,
once in a
yeah,
while,
yeah.
and they had Jordy, who was black presenting, and
Yes.
Worf, who was an alien.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
you didn't
and
know
so-
that. You didn't know that
Right.
Worf was brown. That was not.
I mean, we knew he
Right.
was.
Right.
We knew that he was.
Well,
Yeah.
you just need to hear that voice, and you
Yeah.
You already know.
Michael
you
Dorn
know.
was one of Nana's closest friends, and
Mm.
so he would come to dinner all the time, and he was just he is the lovely. At the time, I don't know if he still is. He was flying airplanes everywhere.
Oh my gosh.
He had a hobby of buying used fighter jets, I guess.
Wow.
It's just kind of only because that's a first world problem.
All right. No joke.
That TNG movie and DS9 money.
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds kind of dwarfish.
Dwarfish.
Well, I read in the companion that the air traffic controllers would recognize him by his voice
Oh wow.
when he would go to
wow.
land. It would be like, "It's Michael Dorn. It's Wolf," because he flew a lot. He flew, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
He had a great sense of humor too, and he has a great sense. I haven't seen him for years. That's why I say that. But he used to be hanging out with us. He had a thing about trying to make people feel comfortable about his color, which a lot of people of color do.
Mhm. Yeah, we do.
Because they immediately think, well,
Sure.
people are going to be a little freaked out that I'm here. I'm either here for decoration or for entertainment.
Right.
And generally, all these white guys, my friend. I mean, when I was a kid in London, I didn't know any people of color because it just wasn't the world I lived in, except for my family. And so I would be invited places to. I remember one lady, girl actually. We were probably about 20. Said, "It's great to have you come because you're just like so exotic and decorative." Like, okay, I didn't know any better.
Been there.
Yeah.
Exotic.
And Michael
Too
Dorn
many
used to
times,
play with
yeah.
that at dinner parties. And he would not say very much for a while, and then he would just suddenly kind of wake up and go, "No, still black." I thought he had just a great sense of humor about it. And that just cracked the room up, and everyone was like,
Plus, he also has his size, which is intimidating too.
"Oh
So,
God."
Yeah.
because my brothers are big guys like that, and they just walk into a room and people get up. They haven't even said
absolutely.
anything.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Always
Exactly.
trying to calm people down.
The voice and the size is like, oh, what's going on here? So,
Yeah, whoa. I can imagine people backing up.
Well, see, that's one of the things that I loved so much about Deep Space Nine and how you all were presented to the world. There was no apologizing. There was no kowtowing, no diminishment of who you were as characters, as men, right?
Yeah.
And to the point that we got to see a brown James Bond.
Yeah.
Oh my
Which we
God!
didn't know.
One of my favorites.
Man. Every time they talk about Idris Elba or whatever his name is,
Idris Elba.
I'm like, we already had James. We already had our brown James.
Got one. We had one. I was very lucky. I mean, there was also, you were really correct, Sabrina, because Avery, for example, who was our boss. I mean, traditionally, the lead actor is everybody's boss.
Number one on the call sheet, huh?
He's number one. And it really is that. I mean, if it's an aristocracy, which kind of acting is, there's aristocracy, and there's a bunch of people who make sure the aristocracy are okay. That sounds hard, but that's the way it works.
Okay.
It's a feudal system, and as the kind of top noble, Avery was able to insist that his culture came with him.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a very African American feel to him. He wasn't just generic colored. He was very much African American. The way he brought up Siroc was very much a father-son African American relationship, which Avery was really amazing at doing. And he really lightened up when I told him, that I was born in Sudan, in Africa. He's been to Africa several times, and he's an incredibly learned man. But he thought, I can teach Siddig, which he called me, about my culture, the African American culture. So he would give me these books by like Cornel West, and I mean, just throwing them at me. And the way he talked was like, it was all like, he's a cool cat, I thought that guy was a cool cat. Did you? And I'm like, wait a minute, what decade am I in?
Hey, Pally. Let's go and talk to Vic.
Talk jazz.
Have you seen him live? Have you seen him at any conventions?
Oh,
no, I've never
the way
had
of
the
laughing,
pleasure.
it's almost impossible to imitate, because I'll try, and he's just like, and that's it. That's all you get.
I think he did that in the show a couple of times.
That's what he does. Yes. That's what he does in real life too.
Oh my goodness.
So he's like kind of the thinking person. He does that because he just wants more time to think about what you just said. I don't imitate him, but I get I know the vibe of him. He is that person. And I really loved him too. And Siroc was really lucky to have him as like a surrogate dad.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I tried to tell my friends, the people who didn't look at Star Trek, that, I said, this show where this gorgeous, this beautiful father and son, black father, he's a single father. The child is in a butthole. He's not, I say that it's so loving, because he would always kiss and hug him, and, they talk to each other and everything. And they said, well, what show? I'm like, it's Star Trek. Oh, Star Trek. I'm like, come on, give it, it's Deep Space Nine, it's Avery Brooks, and they weren't Star Trek fans, so they couldn't get past the Star Trek. I said, it's not always aliens and ships. There are stories, there are real stories. I said, this show, I said, this show does it. If a black single father bringing up his son, come on.
Which is
in a loving
absolutely, which was so against the trope, the caricature of black African American, men. It's always the mom who keeps the family together, the sisters who hold everything together, which is kind of true, by the way. But Avery wanted to change that perception and give young men something to model themselves on. And that was a great gift. I mean, be aware that in August of 92, when I arrived, September we were shooting, I think, but Rodney King had just been beaten up on Crenshaw Boulevard, I guess. And I went down Crenshaw in a cab, or maybe I'd rented a car, I can't remember. And some of the churches and the stores, which are kind of weird. The churches and the stores look like each other. It's not got a steeple or anything. It's storefront. And they were still smoking. The embers were still smoking. So it was very fresh. And that all happened as we arrived. And I know that I don't know where Avery came from, but I think he was living in New York. So for him, it was kind of, whoa, I've got to try and get this into the show. I've got to try and be authentic because these young people we're going to riot. Everyone's going to loot stores. The thing about that always amazed me when people like white presidents who are law and order presidents. Forgive me, I'm coming from another country, so this is all observational. But they blame kids for looting, and they make the whole riot about the looting. Never mind the fact these kids haven't got trainers, haven't got TVs. They're going to take the opportunity, like everybody else in the planet. It's like, oh, no one's looking. I'm going to take this. Right. That's what they're doing. That is not what the riot is about. The riot was about race and this, Tyree Nichols today. Right.
Exactly. Today.
Right now, his video was just released, and we have to talk about it. We don't have to talk about it on the podcast because it could be a bit of a bummer, but but we have to talk about it as artists, as people, as professionals. We have to talk about it.
Putting it out there.
Yeah, that's right.
Sunlight is disinfectant, and someone switched on the light in the basement, and all the rats were like. And all those rats are the little racists who suddenly get, well, now it's light. I'm a light creature. Everybody knows I'm here now. I'm going to walk around shouting my filth to everybody. And that's kind of what happened over the last, 20 years.
Absolutely.
We just see the rats now. We don't imagine them or hear them scratching, which is what we used to do. And in England too. In England, we didn't really think racism was a big deal. We knew the police and all the rest of it were racist, but we didn't know that a lot of people were. And that just happened. It's like, oh my goodness, there's so many of you. But, I can see you. I'm happy as seeing you. I'm happy in knowing you're there. I like knowing you're there. I don't want you to be discreet. I want to hear you shout your stuff. And
I know where you are.
I want to know where you are.
Right.
I know exactly
I think this is a good thing. That it's terrible, but it's a good thing that we're learning. Kids can't just go, I didn't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And they don't anymore.
And
well, and I think so many people are like, oh, we had a black president, so we're good. And I'm like, oh no, oh no, y'all ain't seen nothing yet. And I knew that. I knew that as soon as we had a black president for 2 successful terms, that the backlash from that was going to be more than we could ever have imagined, because they want to make it really sure we're never going to have a Negro in that house again.
That was the first time I saw "Not My President" stickers everywhere.
Yeah.
And they were referring to him because they didn't even all the way through. They didn't believe that he was a president.
Nope.
And
the whole way through.
Amazing.
The whole way through. Yeah.
They didn't consider him a human.
As
usual.
Well,
Donald Trump was the end of that. He was I hope the top of that mountain.
Let's hope.
Finally got the guy we wanted. Because they're nice people on both sides.
Well, mostly. Mostly, like you said, the rats they're not scratching anymore.
No,
they're out there, so
we can see them. They're all out there.
Yeah.
And that's why we do what we do on our show, and why we love to have guests like you on the show, because we have to shine a light on our own voices. We have to promote ourselves. We have to speak for ourselves. We have to tell our own stories. We have to put out this is why we say that where we give you our point of view. I have tons of friends in Trek who watch the same shows that I do, and I'm coming away with a completely different interpretation than they are. And they're like, whoa. And I'm like, you can't even begin to case in point. There's a Voyager episode. What's the name of that episode where B'Elanna tries to change the gene sequencing in her daughter, in her soon to be born daughter, so that she wouldn't look as Klingon. Right. So that she would present as human. And
Lineage or something?
Anybody here anybody of brown persuasion from anywhere in the world, or who's been a quote unquote minority anywhere, we get that. Like, we understood that story that they were talking about. I've heard people who were not of our persuasion, who like, I don't even understand what they were talking about. It's the cruelest thing I've ever seen. Like, da-da-da-da-da. They don't get it. No. So, our point of view to be able to talk about that, we did it. We talked about it on one of our shows, and people wrote us. They were like, I never thought about it that way. Why would you? Of course you didn't think about it that way. That's why we're here.
Yeah. That is true. I mean, I remember that was the big thing while we were making the show, is Michael Jackson getting whiter and whiter.
Right. Right.
And I know he had a skin disorder, but
but no.
You know what?
But no.
African Americans have the same skin disorder, and they ain't getting whiter.
No.
Right.
They're just staying as black as the day they were born.
The skin disorder doesn't affect your nose or lips.
Otherwise, we'd all want the skin disorder.
Right.
But I remember as a child, I came from Sudan at about 3, when I was about 3 years old, 3, 4. And I came to join my mom because there was a revolution in Sudan. They had them all the time, but there was a particularly dangerous one. So they put me on a plane, got me out of the country, and that was my end of my African life. I was, as a Muslim son, I would never have left my father, even if my mother had left my father. Big kid, which is ridiculous. But hey, that's another question. So I arrived in England. I went to schools. I kind of learned English, and I got to I think my uncle, Malcolm McDowell, paid for my education, private education. So I was put on a train and sent to Sussex at a school called Fonthill Abbey. And there were about 300 children there. And there was one African boy called Henry, and there was me. That was it. There was no one else even remotely off-white. They were all from England or Europe.
In all of Sussex.
Yeah. And we had a headmaster called Carter, who was South African. And kind of old school South African.
We all went, oh.
I learned very quickly, and this is kind of why Michael Jackson was interesting. I learned very quickly to assimilate, to fit in, to have a great accent, nothing that takes me out, nothing that sets me apart. So I can't hide this, but I can act like you. And you'll find a lot of British people of color, just if you listen to them, they just sound British. You wouldn't know where they were from.
Right.
And I did that. Henry was beaten every day for wetting his bed. And he wet his bed because he was worried about being beaten every day. And no one else in the school was beaten for that reason. And other kids wet their bed. And we had a South Africa. So put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah.
Right.
I just hid. I just became Mr. Cellophane. I just, you couldn't, and thank God Henry took everything because I didn't have to take it.
Wow.
But that's how you grow up, so that's why to me it's, funny when Michael Dawn still black. We have to find ways to conform that please everyone. And there's good and bad to that. There's things. I mean, there's wonderful things that I've learned because of my Europeanness rather than my Africanness. I would never have been interested in classical music, which I love, and a lot of literature, which I've never have read, which I love, and all those sort of things. We choose our identities, but we think we choose them. Actually, other people choose our identities.
I had a really dear friend that did a tour in the Peace Corps, and she was teaching math in Ghana. She was blonde-haired, blue-eyed best friend of mine. And when she came back to the United States after 2 years there, and she had to leave because of a coup, and she came home after the coup, and she looked at me. Now, I've gone to school with her for years, had known her for years, and she looked at me and she just went, I don't know how you have done this all your life.
Yeah.
She said, I was the only white person for miles. And she says, I so get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we never talked about it again. But she was like, man.
Yeah. Well, I love the fact that you four are out and proud SyFy Sistas.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason why is you're a rare group. I've been to, dozens and dozens of conventions, and I'll see maybe 3 people of color in the audience. Mm-hmm. It doesn't grab the African American community. It's not something that that's not something they choose. And like you said, I don't do Star Trek. Mm-hmm. I don't know why that is.
We're finding that there's more.
There's a lot of us now.
There's a lot of us. It's just, I think, just probably like me, it took me a while to tell people that this was my thing, because I was a closet nerd my whole life, because I was, I swam, I played basketball, but in the back I was reading comics, watching, Star Trek was always on in my house, but I was that nerd, but certain things you can't tell everybody, because I gotta survive. I gotta survive out there in them streets.
Right. But that was the thing that even the white kids were hiding, that they were such nerds.
Oh God, you're right.
Like nerds.
So can you imagine?
Right. So you're not gonna say, of all the things I'm assimilating with white people, nerdom is
absolutely.
It's not gonna be that.
Or there's people like me, my nerd flag has been waving proud for my whole life.
Like, we need to make up a nerd flag.
I was never a jock, and I wasn't like one of the popular kids, and I wasn't, I was sort of like in the middle of the road. I had friends who did all sorts of it. I mean, I was a nerd, and I always had a book in front of my face, and it was always science fiction and fantasy. Like, it was like I was immersed in some other world all the time. And there was no way that I could pretend that I wasn't. And, but then the more I was just me, the more I started to find other Black people like me. It took a long time though, but we're here, and now we're just sort of starting to find each other more. And there's all these pockets in different communities, but it's still very representative of the segregation that's permeates our larger society. Anyway, because there are blurred conferences, cons, there are lots of blurred cons, and there's more coming up every day. And we have our own spaces where we're talking together, or, pockets over here, pockets on Twitter, pockets on Facebook, pockets all over the place. We're not all like in one big thing. So, but we're there. And I think like when SyFy Sistas, when we formed, we just really, we had a Facebook group first, because we formed like right before the pandemic shut everything down, and we had a Facebook group first, and we said, everybody's welcome to come on the mothership, but you got to understand that what we do here is blackity black, blackity black, 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 black. This is what we do, and you're welcome if you want to do that with us. But that's, and so we had to sort of separate ourselves from the larger fandom in order and carve out our own space to do it.
Yeah. Well, what I really admire about you guys is that you have the courage to be yourselves. And it's a really hard thing to do. Now, that sounds like a trite aphorism, but what it is it takes courage to be not popular. It takes courage to do the other thing, to take a right turn or a left turn when everyone's turning left or right the other way. And we've all had relationships. You know how long it is before you actually are yourself in that relationship. What you see is what you get.
That's right.
And love me or leave.
That's right.
That is a hard place to get to, and you got there. At least in this part of your life, and I just think that's really wonderful to be swimming against the current. You probably have all sorts of affinities to all sorts of other cultural things that are obviously African American, but you don't want to completely, deny this astonishing heritage. But but this particular thing takes courage and a kind of selfishness that I like.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm a little older, and I came up a little differently from the two younger ladies there. And
I haven't been called a younger lady in
a
while.
A younger lady.
You know, I came up when I came
Youngsters.
up. I actually didn't go to school with white people until I was in the 10th grade.
Right.
I live in Virginia, and I we had teachers who loved us, and so I had all that, and I was a nerd then, and I didn't know I was a nerd, but I would look at these shows like Twilight Zone and Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea and the Time Tunnel. You know, James
I
Barron
love those
was
shows
on.
too. I love those shows.
And then I looked at these things as a girl, and I read a lot, and and I would talk, but people have been knowing I've been a nerd for the long, because I've got a big mouth. So I'm not afraid to be who I am. I've because I was this girl that was a leader, coming up, but back then girls couldn't be leaders.
You were doing all kinds of things that were pretty distrustful from most people's point of view.
Exactly. So I went against the grain. I've gone against the grain most of my life.
Yeah.
And so, it's like, this is me. I've been myself. And
fantastic. We love that. Who'd have thought that Star Trek, everybody was a closet nerd who watched Star Trek. And we knew they were there because there were 13 million, 20 million viewers every week. Where the hell did these people come from? But suddenly everyone was like, wasn't me. I didn't see anything.
Right.
You were talking about it at the water cooler with everybody on Monday,
And now everybody's like, oh, yeah, I love sci-fi. Yeah, I do. I know all the Star Trek.
And we're looking at them like, yo, you so late to the party.
I was actually in the military when DS9 came on. So I was in the military like the whole run of DS9, and there were a few of us, but I would catch it here and there. Like if I go away on a mission, I come home because DS9, you're like, if you don't catch it, you're like, what the hell happened? This happened. And the reruns, you're like, the reruns are not coming in order.
They did them all in their own order. They couldn't care less. Yeah.
But by the time I came home, to stay, I think it was the 5th season. So I came back at the right season. Maybe that's why I love that season so
I was just going to say.
I just thought about that. Because that's like my favorite season. Maybe that's
it was fully cooked by the 5th season.
Because the 5th season kicked so much ass.
Yes, it did. That's number 2 on my list. The whole
episodes. Season. Yeah, she just listed the whole season as one episode.
Yeah, she did. We did our favorite episodes, top 10 DS9 favorite episodes. She just looked at the 5th season, number 2, the whole entire 5th season.
I'm done. Dropping that mic.
Too much good stuff. Oh my goodness.
So I wanted to ask you about, because I know that our time is starting to wind down, but I wanted to ask you about SidCity, because I think that is one of the most beautiful things that I've seen ever. I mean, I've only been in SidCity a couple of times, but I loved it every time I was there. I was like, I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
And then I just sat and listened. I sat back and listened. I was like, there's real talk happening here.
Yeah,
there's real connection happening
deep.
here. Yeah, people from all over the world.
Yeah. Making
some true friendships.
Yeah.
I mean, it was amazing. Can you tell us just how it got started, what you guys are doing now?
Sure. I mean, it was COVID came, this big, ugly thing sat on us. And we were all struggling underneath this huge bud. And most of us couldn't work, a lot of us were very dependent on our friends and family. And there was a real fear that we wouldn't see each other at first it was like, I remember going down to Costco with my wife, Shana, and she went down to the liquor place. They have a liquor place in Costco. Mm-hmm. It's a different room. And she went over to the thing and she got 3 boxes of white wine. And she's like, taking 3 boxes, COVID done. And we're like, cool, we're good. We don't have to leave the house again. But some of us kind of suspected really early that it was going to go for a while. Mm-hmm. And Mel, I initially wanted to I just wanted to. I think what was it called when you figure out whether people if you've contaminated other people, there was a job that you had you would call. I thought you had to go round to people's houses and say, who are all the people that you've talked to and have
the tracing.
They're the tracer guys. So I thought I could be a tracer guy. Because I was unemployed. I wasn't going to work. And Shannon was like, no, you're not going to go and talk to anybody. You're staying right here. And then Mel and I, at the kind of same time, had an idea. We had a little caucus of people at SidCity who were like maybe 25 people who had just hung in there for years and years and years, just chatted to each other every now and then. I said, well, let's do something for them. And we did. We set up a Zoom, and the conceit was that I wouldn't be the one interviewed, because how many times have you seen a celebrity interviewed?
Right.
I would interview the person I was talking to. And we thought we'd get 10, 12 people and talk to them about their lives and their loves and who their parents were. And if they had someone just pass away, I wanted to know everything about the person who passed away. What was your mother's favorite food? Talk about them. Make them live for all of us. And people found it really comforting. And slowly we got lots of Star Trek fans, and then people who weren't Star Trek fans too came. And it just became this movement, this 400 or 500 people regularly rotating in and out of the room. And I got to meet so many astonishing people who you would never know about their lives. People who don't leave their house, even on a good day, even when there is no COVID, that you don't see them because they have a disability, or they're terrified of people, but they can do the Zoom. And we had a technique where we said, just make your screen black. You don't have to appear. We just don't even tell us your name. Just be there. Right. So a lot of people used it like the radio in the background. And then eventually because we did it for nearly 3 years, eventually they were like, you know what, I'm going to turn my screen on and let people see my ugly face. Wow. And I'm going to let people hear my voice, and I'm going to talk to Sid, and I want to find out what he wants to talk to me about. And so we had scientists and people who were just interested in knitting, and people who brought up children. We had 2 kids born while the show was happening. We saw them growing up. Wow. And there's several romances, and I know that what they're doing now, they're all talking to each other still, and without me, because I think at the end of the day, I've got to call it. But it has grown in its own way, and all these people from all over the world are just beautiful and amazing. And also people were proud about their identities, whatever their identity was, whether it's trans or gay. I mean, you know what? These people, these minorities, these trans and gay and all these people are just like I am when I was a kid. I was someone who was just not liked for the way I was, for nothing. I couldn't help it. So we're learning that we need to ally with each other, all these groups, on a purely voluntary basis, and we will beat the motherfuckers if we do that. There you go. If we get together, we will knock them down.
That's why they're scared. That's why they're out there
trying to divide.
I think that is so beautiful. I mean, it's really powerful. I mean, my personal belief is, I don't knock any way to actually try to advance change. I'm not saying one way is better than another, because we need all of the ways in which we try to make change in the world. But the way that I try to go about the world to make change at this point is on that heart level, and is on that one-to-one. That's where I feel like real significant change happens. When we're human beings who are relating simply as another human being that's worthy of respect. Yeah. If I can, even if it's just for 5 minutes,
Absolutely.
So I'm in such awe of what you all built.
What we all built. Yeah. There were 300-400 of us. We did it together. And there was that beautiful song from the 90s, and I can't remember who sang it, but there was one lyric which was, look, I don't care how you get here. Just get here if you can.
Brenda Russell.
That always stuck with me.
No, that was. Okay.
I don't remember who.
I don't care how you get here.
I don't care how you get here. Just get here
if you can.
You can Brenda Russell.
Just such a beautiful, beautiful lyric.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell everybody. Listen, it doesn't matter. Just get here. Just you don't have to. It's not a struggle. Just do it your way, and it works. And I mean, it's a very Christian thing, even though I'm Muslim. It's one of the thing I love about Christianity. There's a lot I don't like, but the thing I love about it is love. That is the most important thing in Christianity. Any Christian will say there is nothing more important than love. And if Christ taught us anything, it was love. And he could teach, he could sit and teach poor people of the Beatitudes from, the Mount, and it would be love, 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 love. And somewhere along the line, we forgot some of those things, and it became love, love, dollar. Oops, sorry, love, love, dollar, love, dollar, 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 dollar. Now it's just dollar. And we need to get back to the love thing because that works.
Olita Adams is the lady that sung it.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go, Fran.
Fran
was like, "No, you're wrong, Tamia." And I was like, "Yeah, Brenda Russell."
But it was Olita Adams.
Nope.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was a beautiful song. Just a beautiful. I remember.
It's a beautiful song. It's been one of my lessons of my life.
I had the vinyl. I had the vinyl of that with, my turntable.
I say it to
everything.
people all the time. I mean, actors, because we all have different ways of acting. And there are method actors, and there are people who just like to scream in at mirrors and then hyperventilate and then start acting. I mean, there's all kinds of different actors. I don't care how you get here.
Just get here.
Just get here. We thank you.
Are you still directing?
No, but I want to one of these days. But I have to write something to direct. I'm too old. I'm too old to start from that on the wheel, the director wheel. But if I've got the courage to write something one day, then I'll direct it.
With the Star Trek episodes that you directed, were those the first things that you got to direct, or did you have to direct it
on TV?
On
TV. I started as a director. My first job was directing. I had a company in London, and I didn't. It wasn't my company, but it was a bunch of us, all students who left and were freaked out about how we'd make a career in acting, which seemed to be completely nonsensical. So we agreed to use each other, and all the other acting students who were just leaving from all across the country. In every show, whether it was Lear, King Lear, or whatever, Death of a Salesman, doesn't matter. If you're playing an 80-year-old, you're only going to be 23 when you leave college, so you're going to be playing that role. And critics came, and the audiences came, and it was great reviews, and so we were great for a couple of years. But like anything that's a success, the successful people get cherry picked out. And then it kind of falls apart.
So you didn't go through the directors what was the name?
The directors in training.
I did.
You did.
On Star Trek. Yeah, I did everything. I was at all the. I was in the editorial rooms. I was very lucky because I was Rick Berman's one of his favorites because he kind of found me, and I liked him very much. Although he's a very old school producer. But he wasn't Me Too'd. So he's obviously got some integrity, although he's quite brutal as a businessman. I think he's one of those guys. But I thought he was terrific, and he took me under his wing, and I went to him to watch his private viewings of the show, where he would write all his notes, which normally no one else would be at. So I was really lucky to get that insight. And I did a really good job with the first show, and I did an appalling job with the second show.
What? Come on. What? The first one was Business as Usual.
Business as Usual was pretty good.
Really good.
And Profit at Lace, I didn't like the script, and I kind of showed it by doing something else.
I'm not going to say a thing.
No, I'm going to leave that right there.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be a laugh out loud, funny thing, and I didn't get it. And it maybe my sense of humor, but I was like, this isn't funny. So I got to find some other way to do this. But I was too naive to realize that, of course, anything I did, which I shot in a different way to the script, how the script wanted it to be. And obviously, Ira went absolutely apoplectic. He went nuts on me. Said, "Oh, fire me."
Go ahead.
I didn't say that, but I thought it.
You thought
it. And I was too naive to realize that I wasn't going to be able to control what people saw. So I didn't get the edit. And so what ended up on screen was really not what I was aiming for, trying to shoot. No. So he was trying to wedge what he wanted, and I was trying to wedge what I wanted, and we didn't talk about it, and we should have talked about it before I shot it. But it was. I found it annoying to be just basically a choreographer on TV at those days. Just tell people not to hit the furniture. All the thinking and the imagination is done by the writers. I like a bit more collaboration when I.
But how did you feel when Lawrence Tierney and Stephen Burkhoff came on to do Business as Usual? I mean, those are two of the greatest character actors.
I mean, Lawrence Tierney, Derringer, wasn't he? Dillinger, one of the old school 1945 or something like that.
That's the man. He is like film noir guy. I was like,
absolutely.
San Quentin.
Oh man, no, okay.
That was that guy. Well, I'll talk about Stephen Burkhoff. Stephen Burkhoff was a terrifying actor. He is famous for being absolutely vile to people he doesn't like.
Oh man.
I mean, really dangerous.
Not just on screen.
He shouts and throws his toys out of the pram, but he's a lot better now. Back in those days, he was a tough cookie. And Lou Turney, poor lamb, had a stroke 4 or 5 days before we shot the show.
Oh my God.
And I got a call from wardrobe saying, "Will you come down to wardrobe? We've got a situation." And I'm like, do I need to? we're shooting in 2 days. I've got everything, all around. I'm a mess here. And they went, yeah, you need to. And so I came down, and his son, who was his kind of chaperone, met me at the curtain because it was a dressing room. So it was like coming through the curtain. He said, "Oh, hello. Everything's fine. And I was like, "What do you mean? Of course everything's fine." "Oh, Lou, nice to meet you." Kind of brushing his son aside. I'm really excited to have you working on the show. What do you want to talk about? And he just sat there. He was sitting on a chair and sort of looked at me, and I was like, "Lou?" And Bob Blackman, who's the head of costume, who called me down there, just took me just slightly aside and went, "Lou had a stroke a couple of days ago."
Wow.
And we said, "We're shooting in 48 hours."
Wow.
So this went back to the head office, and the word came down from Ira and Rick. They really love Lou. He's going to stay in the show. It's too late to recast.
Yeah, they had him seated.
So we worked with Lou, and luckily there wasn't a lot of work. There were 2 big scenes, and one of them was a big sort of parlay around the table, a dramatic parlay. And I knelt between Lou's knees under his chair, literally ball to eyeball.
Wow.
And
all for Star Trek.
With the script, I was inches away from everything that could go wrong with an elderly man.
Yes.
And I just whispered his lines to him because he couldn't go more than 2 or 3 words before he forgot what he was going to say.
Right.
Oh my God.
He had a stroke. Of course he couldn't.
Right.
It's hard to remember lines even if you're completely mentally capable.
Right.
And so we got through that. And every few, and I'm going to swear you're going to have to bleep this out.
No.
Because otherwise
we don't.
We don't.
But every few kind of seconds, well, not every minute, Lou would be like listening to me, and it was like, say the line, and then he'd be go, who's the fucking director here? I'd be literally inches from nutsack. The highest status place in the room.
Right. Here I am.
That'll be me.
Oh my God.
So yeah, that was really.
I'm never gonna be able to watch that episode
ever.
That's what happened. That round scene. I had to decide where the camera went and all that stuff, and then get between Lou's legs.
Which episode is this? I'm sorry.
It's called Business as Usual.
Business
as usual.
Okay, business.
With the
Quark is selling he's a gun runner.
Yeah. Oh, that was
the legendary Lou Tierney, Lawrence Tierney.
Yeah.
Since he did a
he was
Dixon
in
Hill
he was a TNG, right? He was
he was
in TNG
Goodbye.
and disappeared when
the mob guy on Dixon Hill.
He played Elaine Bennett's dad on Seinfeld too.
Yeah.
Oh, did he really?
One episode.
Oh, okay.
They couldn't. They were scared of him. They didn't invite him.
He was a tough man. But you just have to there's no choice when you're doing a TV show.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to get it done. I did a series called Fallen. It looks like a great charming series. I just did it last year, all through the year. And there was one day near the end where I caught a flu. Like, those flus where you are in a river of snot all day, every day. You can't do anything. And I had to go to work. And they looked at me and like, not good. You're not good.
Right?
Get out of here.
They slapped some makeup on me and just pushed me on set. And I had a plastic bag. And that was for my tissues that I used. And I went through 3 boxes of tissues. They just kept coming. And I put my face mask on. When I took my face, it was like a saddlebag for feeding horses.
Oh, gosh.
Gross. So I just kept getting a new mask every couple of seconds. But you have to do it.
You have to do it.
There is no kind of, we can't do it today because that's everybody's. $200,000-$300,000 lost. No one's going to let you do that.
That's it.
So one thing, actors are very lucky, privileged people, but they don't get a day off.
No, you don't.
That's what I heard.
Camera's got a roll.
No, you guys don't. Performers do not, and you don't. My father was a performer. He sang with a group called the Dells, and he started singing with the Flamingos when he was 14, and then he went to the Dells, and he sang damn near till the day he died. Like those guys worked. They were never home, and they worked. And, the show must go on. You're selling out a place and you got people coming to see you and it didn't matter. And, and I think about them. I use those people as my inspiration all the time, when I feel like, I don't feel so great and I don't want to get up today. And I'm like, really, Tamia? Do you really not want to get up today? Like, do you remember what your dad did for a living? You remember what your Aunt Mary did for a living? Like, you better get your ass out of bed and get going, girl.
Who your Aunt Mary is.
So my mother's, her best friend in the world was Mary Wilson from the Supremes. And so, that was, so like, I think about her. That woman worked. She worked. She worked. She never was not working.
Knuckles were bare. They had to. And especially in the environment they were at. They were making lots of money, but they were still coming through the back door everywhere. And
right.
It was they had to fight for that money, and they fought for it, and they won that battle.
That's right.
Which is pretty amazing. My God.
Yeah, so
we're talking legend status.
Oh yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. That's the same expression I had on my face when I found out who her dad was.
I know.
I said, what? She said, I told you. I said, no, you didn't, because if you did, I would have told everybody I knew, and anybody that was
amazing.
Listening, I would have.
That must have been an astonishing childhood you had.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I did have a pretty astonishing childhood.
I mean,
but
you
it
had
wasn't,
no dad.
It wasn't with my dad. I mean, like, to be fair, I didn't meet my dad until I was 19. Okay. So my dad was I was like his love child, like one of his love children, and I have four half sisters, and
he's busy. He was busy.
Where is this podcast going?
It went to where it went to, baby. It's just the truth. And all of this is all out in public anyway, so, but I mean, my parents, like, there was still a lot of those types of people around in my life, growing up. So it was interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's like, have you had Nana on the show, on this show?
Yeah, we had her.
Did you talk about Sid Charisse?
Yes, we did. Yeah, we did.
That's another jaw off the floor moment for me. It was like, your mom's best friend was Sid Charisse.
Right?
Okay.
No, actually, she was a relative of Sid Charisse's. Sid Charisse was one of her
aunts or something. Oh,
yeah, I mean,
really?
they all danced together growing up as kids.
Right, they all danced together. She was learning. That's
much closer.
Teaching her.
Her best friend was Doris Duke.
Oh gosh,
right,
Doris.
Yeah. Crazy.
Oh yes, yes, she told us that.
I remember the Doris Duke part. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Nana has a special. She's special. She She feels ghosts. I don't know. A ghost could walk in the room, slap me in the face, walk out, and I wouldn't know.
And you still wouldn't.
I wouldn't be like I don't know. I just felt a slap. Felt weird, but I wouldn't ghost.
Something happened.
She walked into her house and she's like, "We're not buying this house."
Mm-hmm.
The ghosts, and I am going to agree. I am going to just say yes. That's good.
Those were always my favorite episodes when she was pregnant, and you guys would have those little moments in
little teeny nuggets.
Little nuggets.
Little Easter eggs.
Or blast, like, this is all your fault.
I thought those were always. I still love those little moments. Those are great.
Yeah. I remember it well because when Django was born, which was September 16th at 11:17 p.m.
Damn.
Come on, Dad.
I remember it because I was shooting a show called something to do with Paradise in the title, and I can't remember what it was. But Vanessa Williams, who was like, she was Miss World or something, and it was like
the Riser episode. You talking about?
That's
the Riser?
it. Yeah. And we were on the beach, and I went to the beach with her, and it didn't matter that Django was born at 11:17. I still had to get up 6 hours later and go to work. And I didn't. They give you a Cedars-Sinai hospital where Django was born. They obviously put the mom in a bed and the baby they bring in from time to time. It's unusual. I thought they just left the baby with the mom, but apparently mom needs to rest.
Yes,
we take the baby. And
because you're taking the baby with you, so
This is the last rest you'll
get. It's the last rest you're getting for the rest of your life.
Yeah, that's true. And there's this kind of crappy armchair with the wooden arms and the kind of worn,
nothing's changed.
And that's where the other person sits.
Right.
And so I sat there, and they're like, "Is there a place I could light?" No. Okay, I'm fine. I just have to do a TV show in the morning, and I've got to look like, okay, don't forget I asked, because the most
like, are you complaining, sir?
Yes. Do you have any idea how useless you sound to me right now? And so I just sat there, and of course, Nana was gone.
Right.
And she had the heaviest labor. I remember I had to put, she had what was called a back labor.
Been there.
And they gave her an epidural, and then they stopped it, and then they started it again. Oof. So they encouraged labor, stopped the labor, encouraged it because they're so freaked out about lawsuits and getting everything to work exactly as it should. So they manipulate the labor. Because if they say the baby's going to be born on this day, then God damn it, the baby's going to be born on this day. And she was in such pain that I brought golf balls with me. She was smart enough to say, "Bring golf balls." And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And I had to just, jam them in there. And she's like, that's not, I'm not feeling it. And I literally bang, bam. And she's like, I'm not feeling that.
Wow.
So it was a really, I had no idea, what was going on there, but it was she had a tough time with Django.
Yeah, that stuff sucks. I'm just telling you. It's not the best thing ever, let me tell you.
That must suck. There's a lot of must suck stuff. Men just lose some potency when they're in their 50s and 60s. Big deal. Take a pill.
Right.
There's a whole page, a rollout page of stuff that women go through.
Let me tell you, it is not pretty.
Not pretty about it.
But I have to compliment you guys on choosing the name Django, which is just such a kick-ass name. Like there's just no way you slice it. It's just.
It's Nana. She's the one. She takes all the credit for everything brilliant about that boy. She was like, he was baby no name for 6 months. On the birth certificate. We just didn't have a name. And she's like,
wow,
he's gonna tell us. I was like, no, sweetheart, we should really find a name. It's a legal thing.
Right.
I'm not calling him anything till I know the name, and he's gonna tell me the name. And we talked about various names. I wanted to call him Ruby for a while, and Nemo came up, and there was because of sci-fi. And
that Nemo. Okay.
Yeah. You're thinking about the fish, weren't you?
I was thinking about the fish.
The clownfish.
Finding Nemo.
Thank God he was wrong. Okay.
It's what happens. Movies come out and ruin good names. Like,
yes, they do.
Django was like so pissed when Django Unchained came out. It's like, that was a great name. I really have to explain it to people, but now everybody knows it.
Right.
And so Nana found that name, and Django finally told her. I guess
that's awesome. That is awesome.
That is awesome.
Look, guys, I'm looking at the time, and I swear to God, I could talk to you all night. You have been so wonderful. Thank you so very much.
Well, you said we have a conversation, and that's exactly what I wanted to do. So I'm very happy with it.
Thank you.
Next time, because I'm going to claim a next time. Okay. Next time, I really want to ask you about typecasting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I really wanted to.
I'd love to talk about that. I'd love to. Yeah. And identity. I'd love to talk about that.
Oh, yeah.
And are you going to be on the cruise?
Not this year, but Nana's going to be there, and Farrell, Terry Farrell.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who is, they're both, these two women are just, I don't know how they do it. They're gravity defying.
Yeah.
There's a classic beauty which some women are blessed with, which where they literally look better later. Great right away, but who cares? Because every guy wants you anyway when you're 20. It doesn't matter what you look like, but as you get older and older, they just look like wow. And Farrell has the courage to let all her hair go grey, as does Nana.
Yeah, I love it, and it looks beautiful on her too.
I'm trying to get my wife to do the same thing. I'm not.
She should.
I can't. It's not a thing that I have dominion over.
No. My mother refuses to go gray, and it would look beautiful on her.
That's it.
Mine's creeping in there.
It does look beautiful. It does.
It does.
I do. I love it.
Earned every one of them.
Every one of them.
I just go grey here for some reason. It's all inverted. I'm not grey up here for some reason yet.
But when you were on Game of Thrones, you was grey. I was like, "Ooh, Lord, is that Dr. Bashir?"
Winter came.
I said, "Ooh."
But don't forget the fine wine when you came on.
That's right.
You
talk about fine wine.
I'm telling you, my gosh.
Very lucky.
Oh my goodness! All right,
the melanin.
We're degenerate.
It's really going
downhill now.
Full circle now.
Of course.
This came on, we were losing it.
It's time.
Well, it's been lovely. It's been tremendous fun talking to you, and I would love to talk more. So please invite me back. We can talk about typecasting. We can talk about all of that stuff, because it has real value for people who aren't even actors. There's very similar things. It's just acting is the extreme end of it.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I agree. Thank you. I would love that. Thank you for saying that, because I mean, just looking at your story and looking at the roles that you've played throughout your career, and then pairing it with different, like, what's going on in the world, around, and I'm like, they got his ass, after 9/11, there was like, bam, but like, what roles do we want for these Arab people, these Arab looking people in,
Well, I'll tell you one thing and we can continue this, but I'll tell you one important thing. When it came to the Arab roles, which I was very happy to do, at that particular time, every time you switched on CNN or whatever, all you saw was screaming Arab men shouting, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, and it was terrifying. And you saw hysterical women crying with blood everywhere because their children were dead. And anger. And this was what we knew of as Muslim Arabs specifically. And I had an opportunity to go, I'll introduce you to someone else. There's another kind.
Yeah.
They're not under such duress, not incredibly extremist, situations. And so you can go back to your friends and say, actually, I know an Arab. Well, I saw him on screen, but I kind of know. Here in Star Trek. And, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So a lot of people got to know an Arab who defied that definition, who wasn't that, who was thoughtful and interesting and smart and just wasn't going Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, like a broken record.
Right.
So that was a really important motivation. But we'll get into all the creases and the wrinkles another time.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. So, folks, Yvette, where can people reach us if they have thoughts about anything that we've talked about today, or perhaps some forecasting thoughts about typecasting that they want to tell us?
All right. You can find us at SyFySistas.com. That's SyFySistas.com. Join us on the mothership. That's MUTHASHIP. And the SyFy Sistas Book Club, both on Facebook. Download the Trek Geeks Network app, where you can find us and our family of podcasts on the Trek Geeks Network. On Instagram and TikTok, SyFy.Sistas. And we're also on the Twitter at SyFy Sistas. Become a patron of SyFy Sistas today at patreon.com/SyFy Sistas. After listening to this podcast, please rate us and write a review. We may read it on the next upcoming episode.
Thank you. And of course, we would be remiss if we didn't give a shout out to the baddest engineer in any known universe and unknown universes. That's Dose, the Anonymous One. Dose. Okay, I picked up the pace a little bit on that one. That's DOS_the Anonymous_1 at Instagram. He's responsible for all the music you hear on our show, as well as these phenomenal production services. And if you need him, look him up. And folks, we love you. Thank you so much for listening. Sid, we love you very much. I think that's clear. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much. I look forward to next time.
So do we. You heard that, folks.
Yes, right.
Peace, love, and hair grease, y'all. Hey, everyone. Sister Tamia here with the shorty shout out for this month. We want to say thanks to the following Patreons for your contributions for helping to keep the SyFy Sistas alive. And we are deeply appreciative of your support. This month, we want to give thanks to Timothy Baum, Homer Frizzell, Dave A. Gregory, Eve England, Duffy Balston, Karen Dramera, Sue K., Anne Marie, Susan V. Gruner, Muhammad Noor, Anna Post, The Chief Ernesto Castagna, L.M., Howard Hogan, J.R. Poole, Scott Jensen, Jamal Taylor, Starbase Centaur 4210 Productions, Stephanie Dole, Sailor Marge, Stephanie Baker, Sam Droke Dickinson, Kalia Zawacki, Liza Albright, Kelly McKinnon, TJ Jackson Bay, Olga Kravchuk, Peter Heisler, Old Klein, Jeffrey Cochran, Travis Taylor, Linda Agareg, Zakia Graham, Bill Erickson, Mark Richmond, and Marcus Bigham. Thank you all so much for your support.